adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 15 years Florida State Prison.
Something that is often not discussed in the aftermath of loss. We all love each other dearly, but we cannot control how each one of us grieves. Aside from mourning the loss itself, there is mourning of what our relationships used to be. How could we possibly express love to one another like we used to when each one of us is constantly drowning in sorrow and regret? Before the anger, before the rage, before the anxiety, before the overwhelming sadness, it was also different. How each one of us is grieving affects each other drastically and slowly, like a virus. It starts eating away at the remnants of the relationship. It is so difficult to continue on with our own sorrow, but it is much more torturous to witness the suffering of the other survivors. Grief is a much more compounding process than most think, sir. The effects keep trickling through your life like a falling stack of dominoes until you're just a shadow of who you were, and the relationships among your family members become a fraction of what was meant to be. My God, sir, what a sad reality we live in now. I ask you, Cameron, do you know what it's like to dread holidays? Do you know what it's like to truly not be able to sleep? To wake up from the sound of your wife and daughter screaming for your help, and you can't do anything? You know, we talked a lot about 2-year-old brains this morning. Do you know what it's like to look at brain scans for 3 days straight of a 2-year-old's head, hoping that something will light up, that radioactive fluid will make its way up to the brain, telling us that yes, she now has blood in her brain, she's gonna make it. Do that for 3 days straight without sleeping, with nothing. Do you know what it's like to identify a body in a morgue? Do you know what it's like to have to mentally prepare yourself for a deceased loved one's birthday? You want to celebrate their life and who they were, of course, but it will always involve acknowledging their death first. Do you know what it's like to love and miss someone so much that their departure from this earth makes you hate the fact that you're still alive? Do you know what it's like to whisper into a dying toddler's ears on her deathbed, "I promise I will always take care of your dad"? Do you know what it's like to be forced to sign your own child's life away? To look at her lying in a hospital bed as though she could wake up from a nap at any moment, only to hear doctors tell you that there is no hope. To hear hospital staff say she's starting to decompose, and if she is to be an organ donor, then we must act quickly. There isn't a place, sir, not even in the deepest chasms of hell itself, where a person can suffer such torment and tragedy. You did this to us, Cameron. You killed them. We're now serving lifetime sentences full of sorrow and mourning, pain, regret, trauma, anger, torture, and misery. No physical incarceration is remotely comparable to living in our hearts and minds, sir. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, not even on you, Cameron. What we hold on to now is only the hope that perhaps when it is our time to pass, that we will all be reunited again. Without this, there is truly no point in continuing to live this miserable excuse of a life that we have been sentenced to. It is the most hellacious nightmare of an existence I could have ever fathomed. Because there's no remorse, Your Honor. I want 30 years, because from the very beginning, the concept of remorse has been non-existent, regardless of anything that was said in this courtroom today. Actions speak much louder than words, and this is how I found out there was no remorse. First, Cameron wanted his license back the very same day Lilia was pronounced deceased. It was truly unbelievable to see it in the news that evening. Right after they carried Lilia away, right after David was forced to sign her life away, to hear of that request just hours after David held his daughter one last time, changed her diaper once more, and gave her his last kiss was almost as unbelievable as the very tragic event itself, sir. To this day, in 3 years, he's been in jail less than 48 hours, which came to my surprise when the defendant's mom used the word "finally" when he got out of jail. To add, they then proceeded to try to suppress the hard evidence and proved he was far exceeding the speed limits. That further validated all the witness testimonies. Finally, they moved to obtain Jessica's phone records in a last-minute attempt to falsely uncover any quote-unquote human factors. In other words, to insinuate that perhaps their deaths were in some way her fault. Just how awful can these people be? Time and time again, they really took things too far. Since May 23rd, 2018, there has not been any sign of remorse. No matter what was said in the courtroom today claiming otherwise, rest assured their actions spoke much louder. There is no remorse, only entitlement, sir. Their deaths, our suffering, and all of these legal proceedings have been nothing more than a simple inconvenience for Cameron and his family. And I want to reiterate one thing. That man is an adult. He was an adult when it happened. He is an adult today. By law, an 18-year-old in the state is an adult. So do not be fooled by this trickery by the defense of repeatedly using the word kid or boy. A kid was my niece Lilia. A kid is Samuel, Henry, and Charlie, Christian, and William. Not that. I'm very sorry to hear that you had to downsize your house. I'll let you know that my brother and his wife and his daughter created a beautiful home in a 200-year-old farmhouse worth $75,000. That's the house that him and I live in today. To establish a new, much-needed precedent, Your Honor, I request 30 years for the implication of this sentencing hearing go far beyond the impact on our family. This is not only an opportunity to grant our family and the girls justice, but to establish precedents. While I understand that there are guidelines and statutes in place, sir, the power you have is truly remarkable and admirable, and I truly mean that. This is a chance to send a roaring message to this fair city of Tampa Bay, to this great state of Florida and beyond, one that clearly establishes that when someone chooses to drive in such a reckless and entitled manner, leading to the death of innocent pedestrians, of mothers and their children, they will simply not walk away from it with a slap on their wrist. Regardless of the offender's intention, age, or prior record and background, this is a vital and necessary change, sir. Within this last week, another street racing incident involving a 17 and 19-year-old in the Orlando area led to the death of an innocent 11-year-old girl, sir. This is plaguing the state. The city of Tampa Bay and the state of Florida at large continue to host the highest rates of pedestrian deaths in this country. Since our tragic loss, there have already been a few more deaths on Bayshore Boulevard from vehicular homicide. These crimes should be prosecuted and punished to the fullest extent of the law. The people of Tampa Bay deserve safer streets. The city needs a new precedent. The state should no longer be plagued by this. Your Honor, vehicular homicide is no less tragic than death from a gunshot. Trust me, sir, my family knows this very well. The punishment should meet the crime. It is time for a change. And on this subject, I'm going to touch on something because I kept hearing the concept of whether or not this man poses a continued threat to this society. That doesn't matter. What worse of a crime than killing a mother and her child? There's nothing worse than that. It happened already. It's about punishment. Lastly, sir, for my brother David, I would like to request the maximum sentence of 30 years.
So this kid was street racing and killed his mother and child, and now his life is over as well. I mean, he's obviously going to be alive, unlike the people that he killed, but he's done for the next 20 plus years or whatever he ends up getting. There's no way out of this. He's done. Can't unring a bell, can't turn back the clock. I guess the only positive thing from this is that perhaps other people will see this and maybe rethink some things, and maybe this can save someone else's life. But this is a done deal. The dead are gone, and this kid...
Mr. Hubbard, I believe you have a video.
Yeah, Judge, just for the record, this is a video
Wow.
impact. It's a victim impact statement that...
18 years old. I guess he was 18 then. I don't know what he... This is probably 3 years ago, so he's probably
some photographs and also
like 21 or
some
something.
video, that's sprinkled throughout. So at this time, the state will go ahead and play that.
You provided this
You
to...
know, May 23rd of 2018 was such a catastrophic
I'm sorry, Mr.
day.
Hubbard.
I'm sorry.
The day
Yes, sir.
that
I'm sorry, what was that?
I just want to ask for the record if you've provided this to counsel.
Judge, he has not seen it. It was a victim impact statement, so
Okay.
our position was that we weren't going to provide a copy. I have reviewed it. I mean, there's nothing in there that, not something that I would normally present through witness testimony.
Okay.
And for the record, Judge, we asked for it. We believe it was discoverable. The state declined. In fact, well, they refused. They said Mr. Reisinger did not want us to have it. They wouldn't give it to us.
You know, May 23rd of 2018 was such a catastrophic day.
a day that changed our entire existence, And it's a day that we're reminded of every day since. We wake up to the same reality and the same nightmare that Jessica and Lilia are gone.
It's scared many people. It's changed many people. And the pain does not subside. And there is no way to make this truly right.
And they were taken in such a way that we will never come to terms with. There will never be any peace.
I was studying abroad in Australia, about to board a plane to our next destination, when I got a phone call from my mom.
I was gardening with my mom in our backyard, and we kept hearing the phone ring, but we were outside and enjoying ourselves.
All right, good evening, everyone. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defendant ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry, it took me a little bit longer than anticipated, but there was a lot of information to consider. Let me just start by saying that, as multiple people have observed, that this is a particularly difficult case because there's really nothing that the court can do that's capable of fixing the harm that has been caused to the victims in this case. So that being said, I've got to start with the law. I'm bound by the law, and the law gives me a guideline for how to analyze an appropriate sentence in this case. So I want to start with the Camacho case. It's really the first thing I need to address is whether or not the court's going to depart from the minimum in this case, which is 222 months, or approximately 18 and a half years in the Florida State Prison, regardless of the consequences and regardless of who that ended up harming. And then the second part of that, the second component, is the harm caused. And in this case, it's just impossible to have greater harm than the harm that occurred in this case, which was the loss of a mother, loss of a baby, and really the loss of a family as it existed when this occurred. I did consider, I also want to make a record, I did consider sentencing Mr. Heron as a youthful offender, but for the same reasons that I'm discussing, I didn't think sentencing him as a youthful offender was appropriate. I agree that youthful offender was something that the court could have done. I did consider it. I carefully considered it. But the court just found that due to the serious nature of these offenses, the extreme nature of the conduct, and again, the level of harm, that a youthful offender sentence was not appropriate. So given that the court is not departing, the guidelines call for a sentence of essentially 18 and a half years at a minimum and 30 years as a maximum. And the court doesn't find that either the minimum or the maximum is appropriate in this case. I've said it several times, that serious nature of the offense, the egregious nature of the conduct, and mostly the harm that's been caused prevent me from putting this as a bottom of the guidelines minimum case. Middle between the minimum under the guidelines and the maximum punishment permitted under Florida state law. So on count one, vehicular homicide, the court's going to adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 9 years in the Florida State Prison. On count two, same charge, court will adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 15 years Florida State Prison, and that'll run consecutive to count one, for a total of 24 years Florida State Prison. Count three is a misdemeanor, unlawful racing on a highway. So the court will adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to time served. Give credit for time served, I believe, 2 days. Court will impose mandatory court costs. Mr. Herron, you have given up the right to appeal the determination of your guilt or innocence. You do have 30 days to appeal the sentence of the court. And I'll direct the bailiffs to take Mr. Herron into custody.
Guys, there's no winners in this situation. This family's been destroyed. Well, multiple families. The families of the victim and the family of this young man. He's been held accountable for his actions, but what he did has nothing to do with his family. However, they're going to have to suffer as well. And again, I want to make that distinction. I know many people will perhaps not have much compassion for him, looking at it in terms of it was his actions that led him here. But he's the one that did this, not his family. They are just, unfortunately, collateral damage. There's nothing else to be said here. Everyone be safe and always consider the consequences of your actions. This is Carlos Picks. Thanks for watching.